welcome to JJ Station and JJ Coffee Talk. My name is Jingming.
I'm John.
So, what are we gonna talk about, John, today?
Oh yeah, so we started discussing this, I think just because of these like internet memes and slogans that we've seen. Like this meme was one example, where you think, we're told like, oh, work hard, it will pay off, and there's so much potential out there, and then we also hear about like Jeff Bezos just going to space and all of this like the bitterness people feel towards
Wanna lock him
people.
out of Earth.
Yeah, people don't want him back basically because it just appears so unfair that we're told like we're told that like we can make a difference in the world, but then there's also like there's also people just like going to space just because they want to experience it with all of these resources and all of this money that people have created. So there's kind of like this like disillusionment, and that got us talking about like 90s slacker culture, which I see as somewhat similar.
Yeah. There's also a similar trend going in China right now, not even in the 90s, just right now,
Yeah.
which we'll talk about at the end.
Yeah, which is also sort of a reflection of this type of experience.
Mhm.
Like I think you've like in China, it's not unique to the U.S. Like in China, you told me Jack Ma like created a movie just to glorify himself, and things like that.
Like he hired all the famous actors and actresses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's the kung fu master, which beats everyone, like the real kung fu masters.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and like the slackers in the 90s were sort of a response to Reaganism, which I'll talk about, but this idea that like greed is good and like we should get back to work and pursue whatever we want. We're gonna talk about that, but like I thought first I'd talk about like all the other American youth movements, because like all countercultures are sort of like all of these youth cultures are usually sort of like against like the mainstream values or the values they've been told to live by, and like creating their own systems. So I'm gonna talk about what all these different ones were and compare them to slackers in the 90s. So we're starting with the Beatniks, which was sort of a counterculture from the 50s or the 60s.
So is this before the civil rights movement?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so they don't overlap, or they overlap a little?
They overlap a little bit, yeah.
I see.
I included a picture of Allen Ginsberg, who was a famous beatnik writer, but you can see he's sort of in like hippie attire, so this picture is also sort of a bridge to the next counterculture movement.
What is he doing? Is he typing something over there?
I think he's playing a keyboard.
That's the smallest keyboard.
I think that's a harmonium, actually.
Oh, I see.
So you pump it by hand and then you play. It's like
cool.
A little hand organ. So I think he's like leading people in some sort of chant. He was a famous like beatnik poet. But yeah, he became sort of this like this influential like fatherly figure when in the next countercultural movement, the hippies.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, to talk about the beatniks first. So yeah, the image you could associate with this is just someone like just taking speed like a stimulant, a drug, and then just hammering out poetry on a typewriter the whole night. Like the emphasis here was sort of on like spontaneity and just like not abiding by any traditional values or like even like literary forms. Like they wanted like something totally new.
I see.
And like there was a lot of emphasis on just like very present and like imminent inspiration. This image is sort of inspired by Jack Kerouac and how he wrote On the Road, this probably one of the most famous beatnik novels, where he just wrote about this road trip with his friends. But he just like took drugs, and then just like he had like a whole roll of paper that was like wallpaper, and then like a wallpaper strip, and then just like started typing continuously with that fed into his typewriter.
I see. So whatever is in his mind, he types out.
Yeah, basically. He said he wanted it to be sort of like jazz, jazz music, which is also around this period.
I see.
With like, and yeah, I think I think you mentioned the civil rights movement earlier. So, what's contem uh, like contemporary to like within this period is the Harlem Renaissance, and like there's a lot of like jazz music that's also trying to like break apart all like pre-existing musical forms. And this is sort of like, I feel like, the literary side of that. And there's also like there's some social sides where like homosexuality was discussed a bit more openly, and they're like, yeah, like I said, they're rebelling against traditional moral values, and that's like also like heteronormative culture, that there's this one like natural form of love. Like Allen Ginsberg was a very famous uh like was like a gay poet,
I see.
and like was trying to create, like trying to give expression to these like forms of love that hadn't really seen the public light before.
So this is spurred by the conformity movement after the war.
Yeah, like the 50s were very very socially conservative,
I
I'd
see.
say.
So it's because like everyone say you need to get a family,
Yeah,
have
like
a wife, have a husband, and have kids.
yeah, like we know what happiness is. Like you
Oh.
have this great domestic life,
I
and
see.
yeah, like we have these great schools, you'll learn all these great people, and then the Beatniks were like, screw all of that, like none of that like is really valuable. Like, and so there's like so much more to find right now, and yeah, like the emphasis here was like on like originality, and like they didn't confine themselves to any existing genres, or like they didn't look to any like literary precedents. So there wasn't like, I don't think there was a lot of like philosophical backing in this period, because like they sort of just rejected all tradition, but like there was sort of like a mysticism. Like I think they did, like they were interested in like actually some like South American forms of spiritualism. I've heard in like Samina culture. I think that was in San Francisco.
Wow.
Like yeah, sort of like nativist and like spiritualist mysticism was that's where their interest lies. And yeah, like I said, I chose this picture because it's sort of a bridge to the next famous countercultural movement, which delves a bit more into these types of spiritualism.
I really like the font for hippies.
Yeah, it's Pacifico is the
It's like
name of
dancing.
the font. Yeah, sort of like beachside merriment. But yeah, this was like the 60s to 70s. So of course, like the image people, like hippies are pretty famous, I think, and the image people associate with them is Woodstock, probably
Is that the music thing?
Yeah, the big concert out in upstate New York, I think.
I feel like right now, if you don't work hard, if you live too freely, people will say you're a hippie.
Yeah, just like the youth movements now, there was a lot of hatred towards them. And yeah, there are still people who haven't let it go, like how much they despise the hippies. But yeah, like, I mean, they like, I think they were so well known because they were the most, like they're probably like the most unified of these youth movements. Like they were, I think because partly because they were united by the anti-war effort. Like opposition to the Vietnam War, and what they saw is like they started to like wake up to like what they started to see as like American imperialism, and like forms of oppression that was realized in this culture that was, you know, very consumer driven, industrialist, and like part of this movement is like a turn towards like environmentalism, and like
green energy.
well, not that, but just like living in harmony with nature.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they didn't. I mean, yeah, I think they just didn't know like what green energies were possible at the time. And yeah, people didn't really talk about global warming too much, but they still saw like, I mean, since the whole history of industrialization, like you can't ignore that it exploited a lot of like destroyed some beautiful parts of nature.
Right.
So there's just opposition to that like they were going down a path that wasn't really in harmony with nature. So that's why there was like, yeah, almost like this, yeah, sort of like this primitivism, like, you know, like the song by John Lennon, Imagine. is like a great example. Like imagine there's no country and no religion too, and
Mm.
people just like living together in peace is like what the song is imagining.
I
So
see.
that's sort of like the ideal behind the hippies.
Mm.
Yeah, and they have a lot more music, of course,
Mm.
like lots of concerts. Like psychedelic rock was sort of the new sound around that time.
What is that?
Psychedelic rock. It's just like a form of rock with like it has like a lot of electric guitar riffs and like a very washed out, like hazy sort of sound. It was, and
Washed out, like tired?
yeah, just like sort of like wavy and like
Oh,
sort of like flows into different
like
harmonies.
drifting.
Yeah,
I see.
like Jefferson Airplane is probably one of the best examples,
Mm.
most famous examples. But like, yeah, the psychedelic rock was sort of, and yeah, it was sort of inspired by like acid or like drug trips. Like they were experimenting with more hallucinogenic drugs at the time.
Oh.
So they wrote songs either about like crazy things that they imagined while on these substances, or like they're more like lyrical and like hopeful. So it's like, yeah, there's a lot of like optimism in this period, and
Mm.
yeah, I think like racial justice is a huge initiative. Like that, yeah, they kind of live in unity with each other.
I thought why did you mention optimism? What is that? What are they about? What
Like
is
it's
it
very
about?
communal, but it's very communal, and they believe they can get together. It's not like I feel like the Beatniks and like the next one we're gonna talk about are like the Beatniks are sort of more of a rejection of like are more of like a rejection of just like traditional values, but like the hippies like kind of believe like they can get together and create something new. There's sort of a turn towards like optimism that like there's like something with like there is some new way of life that's dawning with this generation.
Mm.
Yeah. um yeah, there's also like a lot of non-Western spiritualism, like looking for like a lot of interest in Buddhism and
Mm.
like values that like aren't tied to like American imperialism or industrialization.
Are people turning away from Western religions too?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, like Christianity was seen as, yeah, embodying all those like destructive values.
I see.
Yeah, so I think I think there were hardly any hippies who would call themselves Christians.
Mm.
Some might have not thought about it though, but
Remember, like especially African Americans turning to Islam. Is
yeah,
that part of this?
that is around the 60s.
But they are not hippies.
No, I wouldn't call like, yeah, the Nation of Islam was certainly not. Yeah, certainly a very different culture.
Okay, got it.
And yeah, the Black Panthers, although some of these hippie groups were sort of associated with like Black Panthers and things. Just because like I think they had more of like a socialist leaning.
I think they're
like,
both very anti-establishment.
Yeah, so yeah, there are a lot of people like reading socialism in this time. So that's, I feel like, yeah, we're gonna talk about like what their philosophical precedents are, and I forgot to put this, but I guess you could sort of say like Marxism is one Western philosophical precedent within this period.
Did hippies read Marx?
No, not most of them, but you wouldn't have called them hippies, but there was a lot of like socialist like activism at this time. Yeah. Yeah, because
so they are parallel to each other, may influence each other.
Yeah, well, I think that's because like the anti-war movement was, opposed to this form of Western imperialism that liberal capitalism is the best way to do things, and they're like, I think it was more like, oh, we're not that afraid of socialism, because they were told it was like the greatest threat to us, just like my generation was told that too. Yeah, so this is a movie called Easy Rider, which is, I feel like sort of has like a beatnik vibe. It's like, but it's also seen as embodying some like hippie culture, where it's just about these two men who go, like who ride on motorcycles and just go live freely off of these different communes.
Oh,
Yeah, so there's this kind of like participatory freedom
I see.
where they just kind of look out for each other and they think like we can create society like that.
So they don't have a house or anything. They don't settle down. They
Yeah,
just ride their motorcycles.
yeah, it's
Okay.
just easy rider.
I see.
Yeah.
How about the next picture?
That's Jimi Hendrix.
This guy looks like wearing a Japanese
Yeah, he's like
like a Japanese warrior.
yeah, he played a lot of it does sort of yeah, I think it is some sort of robe from like Asia or something. But like yeah, it's this is sort of like psychedelic garb and he played a lot of like he's probably one of the most like respected musicians from like hippie culture.
Oh, he's holding a guitar.
Yeah, yeah, he's
I
like probably the most famous rock guitarist. Um like next to like the Beatles maybe,
I see.
but yeah, he like yeah, Jimi Hendrix yeah, he played a bunch of like psychedelic music, but like it was very like very technically skilled and like very inventive musically. So like, but yeah, he sort of also embodied like this like nonconformity and this sort of like open like free love attitude.
Yeah, I can definitely see the non-conformity from his attire.
Yeah, so I felt like this also sort of captured like the psychedelic side. Like there's this interest in like patterns that are very like they're like these like oriental type of patterns that
Yeah.
and like lots of like unstructured beauty.